Hello and welcome to the Simply Smart Business Podcast. I'm your host, Nicki Ong, and I'm so delighted to have Erica Roselius here with us today. Erica has been a personal trainer and fitness studio owner since 2007. She specializes in fitness through menopause through her company, Driven Fitness. And when she's not coaching, she's exploring the outdoors around her home in Northern Nevada. And today we're going to be talking about all sorts of amazing things with Erica. We're going to be talking about fitness through menopause, of course, creating community to drive lasting customer loyalty. Really excited about that one. And of course, core pillars of professionalism, integrity, and transparency, which are so important. Welcome to the show, Erica. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so thrilled you're here. So I like to start with a little story time because I think it's important to kind of see where we came from, how we got here, all that good stuff. So can you walk us through where you started and how you got to where you are today?
Oh my goodness. I feel like probably with most entrepreneurs, it's been a windy road, unexpected road. So I started, I'm from Southern California originally, and I never started out, with this dream of being in the health and fitness industry or becoming a personal trainer. When I was looking at colleges, is actually my mom, who was in education, who found the exercise science degree. And I didn't know what I wanted to apply for, like to study in college. And she brought some article, I think, in a newspaper home about exercise science at the time. And she said, I think you should look at this major because I think you would really enjoy it. I had always been an active kid. And so I went to school for exercise and sports science at UC Davis. And then I went and got my master's degree in sports and fitness management. And I thought that's kind of where I wanted to go in terms of athletics, administration, something like that. But I had to work through my master's program, and I happened to work in a corporate events department in San Francisco. So I did a little detour in corporate marketing for 6 years, had nothing to do with exercise or sports, but it taught me a lot of stuff about marketing and management and working with people, and especially high caliber clients. And when I finished my master's degree, I quit that job and I went into sports marketing, and I was there for a few years and then decided I was tired of the travel. There was a lot of travel, and I was wanting to make a more, what I felt was like valuable, lasting impact on the community. So I literally walked out of a job, which I don't recommend that people do, but I did. And it wasn't a good situation. It happened to just be a bad work situation, and decided I was going to become a personal trainer. And that was in the end of 2006. So it was kind of trial by fire. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
That's amazing. And I feel like that's a story that I hear often as far as how you actually got into entrepreneurship is just a really bad experience. And I think women especially are really, really good at just saying, this isn't for me, this is toxic, I'm out of here. So I applaud you. That's amazing.
Thank you. And I think that, when you have no safety net and you don't exactly know what you're doing, it really forces you to hustle even more. And I worked so many odd jobs while I was building my book of clients that first time around. And so I think that it just really forces you to get in there and work hard so that you can afford to, sustain yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. It forces you to look at what you want and what's going to work for you and to make it work too, right? I mean, for many of us, leaving a toxic job is a make or break moment. And also you'll do whatever you need to do to make it work. Yeah, amazing. So how did you end up specializing specifically as far as there's so many different realms of personal training and exercise science in general, but how did you start focusing on women and especially that journey through menopause?
That story came about, I would say, in the last probably, it feels like it was only 3 years, but now it's probably been the last 6 or 7 years. I started as a general fitness trainer, all populations. And I think as you gain experience and work through time, you start to understand the populations that you really enjoy working with and those that maybe are not for you. So I discovered, like youth training wasn't really my thing, or figure competition, bodybuilding, like none of that really was my jam. So I naturally started to gravitate towards general fitness, but women, mostly women. My clients have always been 95% female. And I was young at the time, late 20s, early 30s, but my clients were 40s, 50s, 60. And so they were coming to me with all of these issues way back when, of fatigue and mood swings. And I didn't really get it because I was so far from that point in my life. And there was really no opportunity for trainers to gain any education in menopause besides going to med school. So fast forward to maybe, 2019, I am now older and starting to go through some of these same things. My clients are still going through these same things, but now there are certifications out there for trainers that you can do as continuing ed that focus specifically on fitness and weight loss through menopause. And so that's what I ended up doing, was going and getting 2 different certifications in that particular life stage, which gave me a lot of valuable knowledge, not only to help myself going through perimenopause, but then now I have some tools to give to my clients as they're struggling to go through this phase 2. And I just saw that it was such a need that since then I've continued to niche down to really, that's what I focus on now.
I love that. That's so amazing. There are 2 big standout things for me from what you said, especially around as our businesses age, naturally, we sort of hone in on that target audience that we just love. And I think that's important for people to understand that sometimes it is nice to sort of take that broad spectrum and say, I serve everybody, and then kind of hone in throughout your career rather than maybe the other way around, because it really does help you identify who those people are that you really want to help. So I think that's incredible that you were able to do that. And secondly, I love that you're helping these women, because I feel like menopause has always been this very taboo topic, and it's just kind of like, let's put those ladies in the corner and kind of forget it. And it's just, that's not the case. And I'm so glad that it's coming to light that it's a part of our life cycle as women, and that it's an important part and one that should be honored and respected. And also there are things you can do to not feel like garbage all the time, or whatever you're feeling like.
Yeah. And even just now, there's much more education for corporate America, for employers, for how to help women go through things like hot flashes in the middle of the day. If you're in a business meeting, like, how do we help women feel comfortable? Or even your partners of, there are husbands who are like, clients come into me all the time and they say, my husband thinks I'm going crazy. He's going crazy. And it's true, because we are experiencing this huge change in our bodies that no one has really talked to us about. Doctors get very little training, like less than 3 classes in menopause if they're OBGYNs. And so they can't even necessarily always help, although I think it's getting better. So yeah, I think it's just a huge underserved population, considering every woman's going to go through it. There's no avoiding it. So it's been really, really rewarding.
That's amazing. And I'm sure they appreciate somebody that specializes in that, and then it's just keeps giving back. I'm personally a huge proponent of cyclical living. I love to follow the calendar of my cycle or the moon cycle, depending on, because I even shared it with my mom, who's gone through menopause, when she was like, I can't do this. I don't have a cycle anymore. And I'm like, you're a woman, you still have a cycle.
Right.
We're still cyclical beings, no matter how old you are.
It's so true. And even if you think about seasons, just in nature and in general, it makes sense that we are a little bit more tuned into that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't work on a 24-hour clock like men do.
No.
For better or worse.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me a little bit more, because this I'm really excited about creating community. I know you moved at a certain point in your career, so you had to sort of rebuild that community and driving that customer loyalty. Can you talk to me a little bit about that journey and how that's gone?
Yeah, and I think this has always been part of my business, and I think it's because I worked as an event planner right out of school, and so that really gave me the tools to do a lot of events and understanding how to draw people to events and programs. And so when I started my business in California, that was always a big part of it, was I had something called Stretch and Sip, where every month on the last Friday of the month, it was totally free. Clients could bring whoever they wanted. It was Friday evenings. We would do like 45 minutes of a stretch class, and then everyone would bring a dish to share. I would bring alcohol, and then we would have a little smorgasbord of food and drink afterwards. And it just creates that community where then it's not just, a random person who you're sitting next to the next day in class. It's someone that and it's a neighbor, maybe who becomes a friend. And there are lifelong friendships that have now been created from that original group. And like you said, I moved to Northern Nevada in 2020, and those people still hang out and see each other. And there's been some really strong friendships that have been created. And I think when you create that community within your business, then it really drives that loyalty, because it's much more than just a fitness class. All of a sudden, it's a part of their social system as well, which as they age becomes more important, I think, than ever also. And
Absolutely.
so I usually use events and programs to drive that feeling of community, stuff that's outside of the gym where they can just kind of get together and talk. So now I'm working on that through my new business here, same business, but new branding and a new location, where I'm now trying to get that same community feeling with hikes and happy hours, things like that, where women can get together and not only get to know me, but each other.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And especially because as somebody that's fitness is a huge part of my life personally. And I think when you're not intrinsically motivated by working out and exercising, for a lot of women, especially, it's so important to have that community container to sort of help drive it, right? That sort of idea of, oh, well, my friend's going to class. I need to go. I need to show up. And it helps motivate you.
It really does. And, women are such social creatures, and that's how we bond, is by talking. And, like, if you want to call it gossiping or whatever you want to call it, that group dynamic where you get together, if you think way back to many moons ago, if the men went off to hunt, the women stayed and took care of the home and the gathering of the food. And we don't have to do that these days, but I think we still need that social part to really feel connected, to bond, to work through problems. And men, typically don't need that same kind of idea. That's why I hear so many women come to me who maybe want to join classes, and they say, like, my husband doesn't understand why I can't just go to the gym and do it. And that's what he does. And it's just because we're very different creatures, and we do need different environments to feel fulfilled and also have that accountability. So I think it's really important, particularly for women.
Yeah. And I just love that you've filled that need for your community, because you see it and you're doing it. And that's incredible. A lot of these shows, we talk a lot about how in lots of different industries, how sometimes marketers and entrepreneurs can sort of have that wall between them and the people that they're trying to serve, as opposed to actually reaching out and talking to them and really figuring out what they need on a deeper level, not just on, offering fitness services and group classes and being a trainer, but what's underneath of that, what's deeper than that.
Yeah, and I think it does create a bond, obviously. And I think that is actually a large lesson I've had to learn through the years, is how much of a wall to have. So, there has to be some boundary. I try to keep my friendships and my clients different, because I just think sometimes things get weird with money and memberships. There's occasionally, the back and forth or the mixing, but I really try to keep it separate. And I used to share a lot more just personally and take on a lot more personally from people, but it's a kind of a fine line for me. And as someone who I think is in any like therapy, coaching, teaching situation, it's that fine line to avoid burnout, right? So you're creating this community, you want people to be close to you, but also if you're giving all the time and you are then taking on all the time what they are giving back, which sometimes isn't great, because it's a little bit of a therapy situation, right? Even though I'm not a therapist. That I think is a really big thing that I've had to learn and hone. I'm not always perfect at, but I've kind of had to put more of a wall up as I've gotten older, just to protect that space.
Sure. That makes sense. And I'm sure there's a lot of like empathic energy there too, right? Where if you're naturally empathic, you literally take on the feelings and emotions of other people if you do not have that separation.
Right. And I think people that naturally probably get into any kind of coaching or teaching or therapy role, they probably have a little bit of that. So now I think, sometimes it's actually where people think, oh, I'm not very sympathetic or empathetic, but it's just been like self-preservation through the years of learning. And that's been a really interesting part of the journey as being the coach and the business owner, that I never expected.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just about showing up and doing the job. It's goes much deeper than that on your end too, which is for better or worse, right?
Yeah.
It's nice in ways that you're able to connect with people on that level, but it's also a lot of self-learning too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So speaking of those deep core values of yours, professionalism, integrity, and transparency. I love these. These are very similar to my own. So talk me through where those came from and how you put them into play.
I think with the professionalism, again, so I said before I came from corporate America, I worked in the financial industry in San Francisco, downtown. It was business attire every day. So I came from a very fancy environment. And so when I
Yeah.
went into training right away, I noticed that that wasn't at the time the typical or the norm, right? Trainers will look like they just like barely rolled out of bed, not
Yep.
awake, like ripped clothes, all this stuff. And I just thought, you cannot eventually want to charge whatever, $250 an hour, or whatever you want to charge, unless you look like you are a $250 an hour professional, right? So I just believe in being professional outwardly, looking put together, and then showing up on time. I mean, stuff that you would think is very simple, but the number of times through my career where I've heard clients say, I just can't believe you show up all the time. Like I've had a trainer that just used to cancel constantly or not show or was late or this or that. And it just astounds me because as someone who does this full time and it's my living, like not only just ethically speaking, but this is like your job. I can't imagine it. So that's always
Yeah.
been super important to me throughout my time. And then the same thing with integrity is, if you have a contract, then you're going to stand behind your contract as a business owner. If I say
Yeah.
someone can get out of that contract without notice, then that is what I always, follow. So I've had situations that you always have kind of sticky situations or negative situations with people leaving business or coming into business. And so I
Sure.
always just try to be honest and open and make sure that I stand behind whatever I say as a business owner and the services that I provide. And then the same thing with transparency. I tell my clients, I'm a solopreneur. So I have a small business. When I was in Southern California, I had about 100 clients. I'm about less than 40 now. And so if things are rocky, I tell clients like this class is going to get canceled. There's only 2 people in it, like we need to get more people in it. I'm doing my best to get more people in it, but I can't keep this class open the way it is. And just
Sure.
always being open and transparent about the way that business is going with limits, obviously, but just so people don't feel like the rug is being swept out from under them at times. And I feel like
Absolutely.
people have appreciated that over the years.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing better that you can ask for than it's those little things, right? It's the showing up on time, the being true to your contract. It's all those little things that people appreciate because so many people take advantage of those things these days, which is really sad, but fortunate for those of us who stand by them and continue to be open and transparent. And I totally agree with that keeping those lines of communication open, people are very understanding as long as you're forthcoming with them.
I think so. I totally agree.
Yeah, amazing. So are there any areas of your business that you've experienced over the years that have been challenging, like your move or anything like that that you've had to overcome that you want to share about?
I'm laughing because I'm thinking of COVID. Like that was like
Yeah.
the biggest, I
Yeah.
think for most people, we all had our challenges during that time, but I think especially in the fitness industry, that was a huge year to 2 years, of challenge, especially at the beginning
Yeah.
when everyone's gyms were shut down. All of a sudden we had to struggle and like pivot to figure out how to keep working. And so those of us who were able to pivot and adjust and, add services in different ways, I think, and survived it. It was a very challenging but also valuable time because I think we all learned a lot. And during COVID is also when I moved. So that was like a double whammy of then I didn't really have to start my business over because at that point, no one was working out in person. So I could keep my business the way it was. But then coming out of COVID, starting to build a whole new business in a new state. And I mentioned, we talked before, I moved to a rural area. There's only 50,000 people in our whole county. So I have 6,000 people in my town. So learning how to work and market in a small rural community has been a big learning curve as well. I think I'm finally
Yeah.
getting it, but
Yeah.
it's very different.
Absolutely. And what's been helping with that, if I can ask?
Yeah. So I've really focused on getting out in the community and talking to people face to face. So, if there's a business opening, being there, or if there's another group hike or walk or other town event, making sure I'm going. And I'm not necessarily going to sell myself. It's just to get out in front of the community and meet people. And naturally, they ask what you do. And then it's just creating those connections. And so hopefully you're top of mind later on. The other thing I started doing, which I think works well in small communities, maybe not so much in a large city, but Facebook groups are very big here. So each little town or community has a Facebook group. And so there's about 6 of them here that I post in all the time. Not always promoting what my services are, but if I've written a blog or I'm doing a free event or something, I post in there. And that has
super smart.
Worked really, really well. I have a challenge every year that I do called the mile a day in May. And you just have to walk at least a mile every day and you get a point, and we give prizes. Nice. And this year I posted all those in the Facebook group, and I have 14 new people who I don't even know who they are, who are participating. And for me, in this size of a town, that's huge to have.
Absolutely.
Those email addresses now, which is a huge thing for me. My email list is my number one most valuable thing. So that's worked really well. And I had never had to do that before. It's just a different kind of marketing.
And that's true, I think, for all small business owners when it's a more brick and mortar setup where you have to have people locally, is you have to understand your community first, right? It's not just about even your target audience at that point. You have to understand how the community works. And I love that idea about networking, even if it's not that hard sell or that cold sell, because you never know, meeting somebody on a hike, they say, oh my gosh, my friend needs you so badly. Let me call her up and I'm going to give her your information, because even 2-3 people removed, you could make a difference potentially.
Completely. And, those same people, because it's such a small town, I might see them at the hike. And then last night we had our first concert in the park. I saw someone who said, hey, I need you to meet my friend. She's looking for fitness and weight loss. And so it's like, you just see those same people over and over and over again, where you don't really see that as much in big cities. So yeah, it's really, and they really have to know you here. If they don't know you and trust you, they will not buy from you, I'm finding. Whereas in a larger city, my experience was people like, oh, I'll just go try that out. Or, there's a million gyms or salons or this or that. Whereas here it's like, no, I've known this person's family for multiple generations. So that's where we go. So it's creating that trust that is, I think, more challenging in a small community, but it's definitely rewarding once you figure out how to network appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. And I mean, I think that can be said in different instances and in lots of different locations in lots of industries. How do you build that trust, right? It's going to be a little bit different for everybody, but just, I think your consistency and showing up time after time, I mean, that plays into it, right? Rather than just showing up and throwing up your hands when you don't have 10 new people in class the next week.
Right. And I think especially those grassroots marketing efforts really do take time, it just takes time for people to see you out and about in person, seeing you on Instagram, seeing your email list. And that, I think, is no matter where you are. Absolutely. And I think that's another big lesson that I learned, is that it takes way longer than what you think it is. You're like, I'm going to start this business. I'm going to have 100 people. And you don't realize it's like a rock band who's all of a sudden famous. And you think, oh, these people just burst onto the scene and you haven't seen the last 20 years of playing in like dive bars and all this other stuff.
garage practices. And and that's the thing. That's why I like to talk about the story, because it, for a lot of entrepreneurs, we see the sparkly, shiny success of today, but not the past 10, 20 years of climbing up that hill. So I think that's amazing. This has been so incredibly insightful, Erica. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. What is the best way for listeners to connect with you?
I'm really active on the social media outlets. So Instagram, I'm Driven Fitness Erica. I'm pretty much the handle Driven Fitness Erica almost everywhere. My website, drivenfitnessnevada.com. I'm also available there.
Awesome. And I'll include all the links in the show notes so people can just click right on those. Do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
I think just to be tenacious, be fierce, and don't wait for the perfect time to start. Don't wait for the perfect time to start your business or launch that program or that marketing piece. Just get it out there, and you can always adjust but the most important thing is that you just start somewhere.
Well said. I couldn't echo that more because it's never going to be a perfect time, right? It's just not. Well, Erica, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the podcast. And to our amazing listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the Simply Smart Business podcast for more inspiring conversations and actionable strategies to help you in your business. Stay smart, and we'll see you next time.